Good day everyone. So for today's video, we're going to discuss something about random variables. So hindi ito yung hindi natin i-define yung random variable as a random variable to which the definition of a variable is the definition we have on our algebra class. No. But a random variable in probability is a way to map outcomes of a statistical experiment determined by chance into numbers. So what do we mean by that? Let's say, for example, you have an experiment. Okay, you have an experiment and you have your possible outcomes on your sample space. Now, random variable is a way or a process of uh, representing those outcomes determined by its chance to happen into real numbers. Let's say for example, we flip a coin. Let's say for example, we flip a coin and then um, uh, we have the possible outcomes heads and tails. Okay, so or a head or a tail. These are the possible outcomes. So now, when we say random variable, we we transform or we represent these outcomes determined by its chance. So what is the chance of getting ahead when we flip a coin? That is 50% or 0.50 or 1 half, diba? Or 1 half. And then the tail is 0.5 then and then or 1 half. So representing these outcomes into these numbers are the what we so-called random variable. And we actually have two types of random variables. We have number one is the discrete random variable, to which it take on a finite or accountably infinite number of distinct values. So let's say for example, you have an experiment and then all elements that you have on your sample space can be counted. Okay, let's say for example, let's say for example, when we flip a coin, the possible outcomes are just heads and tails. So pwede mo siyang bilangin. Okay, so that is why that experiment connotes a discrete random variable. So another one is continuous random variable. A continuous random variable takes an infinitely uncountable number of possible values, typically those which are measurable quantities. So just like the typical variable that we have. If you still remember the definition of quantitative variable, we actually have two. We have discrete and continuous. So kay random variable, ganun din po. Meron tayong discrete at meron din po tayong continuous random variable. In such a way that si discrete takes on a finite number of distinct values na bibilang, while kay continuous random variable naman po, it takes an infinitely accountable number of possible values, typically those that are measurable quantities. So let us have an example. Let's say for example, your experiment is you flip a coin, and the outcomes are just head and tail. Okay? So hence, you can say that in that experiment, it has a discrete random variable. Okay? Because it takes on a finite number of distinct values. While on the continuous random variable, let's say for example, your experiment is measuring the length of time you can hold your breath. Okay? Or kung gaano mo ba katagal na napipigil yung hininga mo. In that way, you measure that time. Let's say for example, in seconds, okay? Or in minutes. So in that case, you are measuring that outcome. You are measuring that outcome. Ibig sabihin, it is somehow or it is somewhat connotes uncountable number of possible values. Pwedeng 2.3 minutes, pwedeng 2.5 minutes, 'di ba? So depending upon the outcome that you may have on your statistical experiment. Let's say for example, you your statistical experiment is getting or choosing a student based on their grades in general mathematics. Okay? So the grades are just from 60 to 100. So you can actually what? You can actually count them. So hence, we can consider that experiment to which it connotes discrete random variable. Okay, and that's how we define random variable.